Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, as we're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Our Spotlight show is in its 20th year. We're the nation's longest-running community podcast. Mission Fed, for 6 decades, have been doing great things in our community, whether it's food insecurity, whether it's working with the homeless, Alzheimer's. They're doing just great things. It is always a great day when we have some of our leaders in, focused on the military flank, and we got David Boone, President and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, better known as SDMAC. How you doing, David?
Doing great. Glad to be here next to my partner, Jim Gruny.
Exactly. Jim Gruny is a Community Liaison Officer for MCRD, and yes, if that name sounds familiar, Jim's been a frequent guest on our Spotlight show, and I'm honored to have be with David. We are co-host of Mission San Diego Military podcast series. We'll be chatting about that as well, joined by my co-host, Noah Brady. This is your, fourth interview you've been on now? How many?
I think third.
Third? Okay. Very.
Third day of it, at least.
Are you enjoying it at least?
Oh, definitely. It's an honor to be here.
Good. We're going to start with you, David, just real quickly, just a little bit of a mission of SDMAC.
San Diego Military Advisory Council has been around for 22 years. I've been in the position for a year and a half, and it's been my honor and pleasure to lead this group. And we're about advocating for military veterans and their families. It's as simple as that. Exactly.
And Jim, lifelong Marine and so forth, and now Community Liaison Officer at MCRD, and we're just so thrilled to work with you on many different fronts. Just talk a little bit about the role you play.
Well, one, I couldn't be happier to be here today, so thank you very much.
Of course.
So at the depot, my job is to introduce San Diego to the depot and vice versa. We want to demystify what the Marine Corps is all about and what we do on the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and just seek to be a good neighbor in San Diego.
Yeah, David, obviously, great press conference, and it was all about SB 1407. So for our listeners, what is SB 1407?
Senate Bill 1407 is a legislative action at the state level, going through the process. So it's far from complete, but in the beginning of the legislative process, to provide a full tax exemption on military retirement pay.
Right. So why is that such a big issue? Why is California not up there with these other states in the country? And is that a reason why this has got to be such an important bill to pass?
Thanks for that question. So there have been other bills in the past proposing the same kind of initiative, but the supporters have really pushed it forward on the basis of we owe it to these veterans who serve their country and shouldn't be paying a tax to be in California. We at SDMAC took a different approach and really looked at the data that showed that our veterans were leaving the state in large numbers, and they're going to states like Texas, Florida, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee, and so we looked at the states where the veterans were going, and every single one of those states had tax incentives to pull veterans to their state. So we looked at California, and California had nothing to incentivize a veteran to stay here. Up until last year, the governor put in the budget a $20,000 tax exemption on military retirement pay, but it had caps. So if you were single, you couldn't make more than $125,000 in gross pay. If you were filing joint, you couldn't make more than $250K. Well, that would serve a very small population, and it wouldn't change the needle for our objective, which was to retain veterans in our state. So that's when we really drove 1407 to create this bill in order to retain our veterans. And we have a huge skilled labor shortfall. We have an economy here in San Diego in particular that we want to drive innovative technologies, all of which veterans could play a large part in.
Well, and Jim, to answer, or sort of follow up on what David is talking about, there is so much, mind capital with veterans, whether they are there for 20 years or whether they're 35 years. And now they take their second job. You start when you're 19, you're 39, and you're retired, for God's sake. You still got a good 25, 30 years to go, which is also contributing to the tax base, for God's sake. It seems like a no-brainer. Jim, what do you think?
I think it seems like a no-brainer, too, to put this in. I think people are driven by incentives. Economic incentives is a big one. And, I would tell you, just think about individuals when they're getting out of the Marine Corps. Transition is a tough time. Any period of transition, regardless of where you are in your life, is a turbulent time. When you transition from the military after being in 20 years or so, I think one of your biggest thoughts is, how do I take care of my family? Now, I know I got something in my pocket, and that's retirement. On the other hand, I know I need to seek a job because I want to continue to support my family. Individuals are going to go to where they think they're going to get the most bang for the buck. And again, they know they have that military retirement. Now, if you think you're going to stay in California, one, that's going to get taxed at at close to a full rate, and the cost of living in California ain't that great. So you have individuals that are looking to go to Tennessee, South Carolina, Texas, other places where the dollar stretches a little more, and then they have a little bit of comfort, knowing that period, the portion of their income, a significant portion of their income is not going to get taxed, so that they can now go look for another job. They're going to get another job. They're going to have another career. They're going to do a lot of great things. And now when they get that career, all of those taxable dollars are going into the coffers of whatever state that they're going to. And in many cases, it's not California.
There's another aspect to this, and that's national security. We have, as everybody knows, a large number of bases here in Southern California and San Diego. If you don't have a sizable veteran population, who's going to be the civil service folks of the future? Jim Gruny is a great example. There's no better guy than a guy with Jim's background to be the community plans and liaison officer for MCRD, right? He can talk Marine until the cows come home, right? Can you imagine if the person filling his shoes had no military experience? So there are a lot of positions around a base, from firefighters to the security force, operations on an airfield to the port, where if you're utilizing that veteran population for our civil service employees, you're just that much further ahead. So that's an aspect a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, there's no question about it. We're chatting with David Boone, President and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, joined by his colleague Jim Gruny, Community Liaison Officer for MCRD San Diego. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, nation's longest-running community podcast, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Noah, you got any thoughts on this?
No, I think I'm just still listening.
Yeah,
learning a bit more about the.
Well, and as you know, your mom is a huge supporter. Angela Brady is the superintendent of the National School District. Jim knows her well. David, I think you've met her before. She chairs the Classroom of the Future Foundation Board and is totally laser beamed on anything that's focused on the military. David, you and I have talked about this before. It's not just veterans. I mean, you retain folks here. It's everybody who benefits from the veterans staying here. So it's the community groups, it's the nonprofits, it's the other businesses that we're working with. That footprint is huge, and not only focused on the military. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's an important point. There are some people that think that this bill would only provide benefit to those that receive more in their paycheck, right? The veteran community. But when you talk to business leaders, large business like NASCO, our shipyard here locally, or small startups that are doing drone technology, and everything in between, from research and development to production, manufacturing, they all want veterans. They all want people that know how to come to work in the morning, have the discipline of getting the job done, the ingenuity of figuring out ways to overcome problems. They want those kind of people. So it's larger than the veteran community who's behind this. And we showed that the other day aboard the Midway. We had about 60 people at the press conference from across the community, to include our local universities. So as Senator Archuleta said, this is not just a bill, this is a movement.
Well, it's a huge movement, and because of the relationship that the military has with, shout out the universities, whether it's San Diego State, Cal State San Marcos, go down the list on this aspect. Very, really important, not because of the folks that are going to those schools, but the type of courses that they offer is absolutely just so critical on this. And I think when you start mentioning to folks that it's the military spouses that we love talking about. And Jim, maybe you can address this as well. And David, you can chime in too. You can't talk about SDMAC without military spouses or MCRD, and that's critical. You keep that veteran here. There's a military spouse that's involved, and that may be working or not working in the area.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we talk a lot about military members who pick up a lot of skills along the way while they're in the military. Spouses do the same thing. I mean, they're running a small corporation when they're raising a family and moving them. I mean, I had 25 different addresses in the time that I was in the military. My wife raised 2 kids while I did it. Raised the household, had a job, worked from that. They do a tremendous amount. So when you can finally get them somewhere and make them stable, not only are they going to be contributing members of the community, but they're going to be contributing members of the business community, and they're a treasure.
Yeah, and the business community, and I think it shouldn't be lost on this, both you folks, certainly are just absolutely laser beamed on the work with the community groups, whether it's the Armed Services YMCA or it's Feeding San Diego. Talk about that, David.
Well, we have partners across the community, and about a year and a half ago, in response to emergencies, we created the EAG, the Emergency Action Group, and there are 5 nonprofits, principal partners, SDMAC, Feeding San Diego, 0800, STEP, and ASYMCA. And we respond to emergent situations. So the government shutdown, the plane crash at Murphy Canyon, the second government shutdown, the partial government shutdown. And guess what? We're responding today. There are 250 families that have been evacuated, Navy families, out of Bahrain, Naval Support Activity Bahrain, because of the war.
Didn't know that.
And they're coming here to San Diego. So they were yanked out. They're not going to be able to go back. They lost everything. They got to get their kids into school. They need clothes on their back, and we're responding to that.
Yeah, and we come back from break. I want to continue that conversation. Want to hit a little bit about those businesses and those universities and those nonprofits that were with you at the press conference, and that was just a smattering of the ones that could fit on the Midway in that area. But also the economics behind it. David, you and I talked about this before. There was a great report put together with an economist that talked about here's how the numbers work. Yeah, there may be a little bit of a shortfall in the tax base on year 1 or 2, but boy, when this thing kicks in, absolutely the other way around. And then, at the end is that if you could be thinking about this, and Jim, you can add to it also, what can our listeners do to support the efforts of SB 1407 when we return? Chatting with David Boone, President and CEO of San Diego Military Advisory Council, and Jim Gruny, Community Liaison Officer for MCRD, after this short break.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Our Spotlight Show is the nation's longest-running community podcast, now in its 20th year. Mission Fed, 6 decades of doing great things in our community. We're chatting with David Boone, President and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, joined by Jim Gruny, Community Liaison Officer for MCRD, all about SB 1407. And we were chatting about this before, and maybe you can jump in a little bit more depth on this. You had universities there at the press conference. You had community groups, pretty much every chambers of commerce and all that. Explain again why everybody should be behind this.
Yeah, so we wanted to demonstrate that this wasn't just a veteran thing. People that were going to get direct benefit. So we reached out broadly across the community, large business, small business, universities, community groups. The San Diego Regional Chamber sent a letter of support, EDC. It's not just the people that get the direct support. It's going to benefit the entire community. Who else but a military veteran would you want to be your next door neighbor? They're usually the ones that coach our kids' softball and soccer teams, or they're the Boy Scout leaders. I was a Boy Scout leader when my kids were young. They're the folks that jump in with both feet. So I think we demonstrated that the other day on the Midway, and the legislators that came to speak were very impressed about how broad our support was.
And I want to just jump on that point here. And the reason why SDMAC is just so laser beam on it, and David's been involved in this since he hit the ground running as running the SDMAC show, is that the word from the legislators are, we don't hear from you enough. You folks have to sit there and be full force, full throttle on why this is so important. Talk about that.
Yeah, when I go to Sacramento, and I'm going again on the 7th and 8th of April, they always point out to me on veterans issues, not specific to 1407,
Right.
but any veteran issue, when it comes to testimony in Sacramento or support, letters of support, and it's a kind of a finger in the chest. They say, you guys don't show up. And so I said, okay, I'm going to bury you in letters. And so we have been advocating within our constituency. And so for the general audience, if you buy into what we're talking about here, the best thing you can do to support this is engage your state legislators in whatever form you're comfortable with, through their portal, through their website, pick up the phone, or go on our website, sdmac.org, sdmac.org. We have a page called Advocacy. On that page, all you have to do is type in your name and press send, and a letter on 1407 goes to Sacramento. So that's where we need to demonstrate that the people, the general population are behind this initiative.
Well, and I think this is a good point to also mention something, David, that you and I talk about quite a bit, and Jim's fully aware of this too. And you had going to be doing another military economic impact report. Usually comes out in October, November. We've been doing this for quite a while. SDMAC has been commissioning this. It used to be at Point Loma Nazarene. Now we've been doing UCSD at Rady Business School. The amount of money, the direct spending because of the military, $39 billion or something to that effect, and indirect close to $70 billion. If that is not an incentive enough to support, what we're doing for making sure that we're keeping our veterans here, I'm not sure what is. Talk about that.
Well, we're 22% as of last year's report. We're 22% of the economy. We're the largest single group in the economy. We're larger than tourism.
Double.
We're larger.
Right.
We're larger than biomed, which surprises a lot of people. And we're growing. And so to have the right people, of that $39 million in direct spend, let me back up. 39 billion, not
Right.
million.
Right.
Of that 39 billion, 20 billion are in government defense contracts. And they employ over 200,000 people in our region. And so this is a very large economic sector that contributes, and it also provides resiliency to our economy. When you look at the economics during the pandemic, the years 19, 20, 21, while the non-defense sector was tanking, defense was going up. So it stabilized our San Diego economy. So there are a lot of benefits to having the diversity in San Diego, as well as the military presence.
Well, and I'll even take it a step further. If you go back to 2008, when we had the unbelievable meltdown with real estate, everything went south on that one, except for the military spending, and that really stabilized that aspect of it. Jim, you're so ingrained in the community. When you chat about different things that the MCRD is doing, of course, and engaging the public in this, and talk about how it ties in some ways to SB 1407.
Yeah, well, first of all, one reason that it ties in, we talked about the legislators who say that we don't step up for ourselves. That's not surprising to me. When we bring a Marine into the Marine Corps, we tell them, it's not about me, it's about we.
Right.
It's not ingrained in us to talk about ourselves, to advocate for ourselves. You get a young officer and you bring him in and say, hey, it's no longer about you, it's about your Marines. We exist to take care of Marines, very service-minded. But we don't again, we don't advocate for ourselves. We don't talk about ourselves. So I just want to say I appreciate everything that everyone is doing, to help us out on this, and everything that David put forth on what folks in San Diego can do. Is deeply, deeply appreciated.
So when is there a time frame on this SB 1407?
So legislation goes through a long and winding road.
It does.
And in our state legislature, there are multiple committees, both on the Senate side and the Assembly side. The next hurdle is April 8th. I'll be up there testifying to the Revenue and Tax Committee. It'll go through Appropriations, and then the Military and Veterans Committee, and then it'll move from the Senate to the Assembly, and we do it all over again. So it's a long process. So hopefully at the end of the year, we'll see the impact of what we're doing today.
As I was mentioning before, because I was involved in it only from promoting it and all that business. The research has been done there. The stats have been done there to say, here's what the numbers are. You cannot argue with these numbers. Yes, there'll be a little bit of a change, obviously, when we first implement this at 100%. Hopefully it's 100%. But by year 2 or 3, I forget what number it was, then you start, getting even more revenue into the state because these folks have stayed. They're contributing to the tax base. It's a numbers thing. And if anyone's thinking we're going to lose a tax base, that's absolutely wrong. We're going to gain. Am I right or wrong on that?
Yeah, so we did a study, SDMAC, back in 2018 to show the impact, and created a model to anticipate how many more veterans would stay.
Right.
And so it didn't take long before you were net positive.
Exactly.
Because of, the average retirement pay in California is $34,000. So that's what we're talking about as an average. Meanwhile, most veterans, if they served 20 years, they're in their 40s, they have a second career. And so, conservatively, they're earning 70, 80, 90,000. And guess what? Their spouse also works, and they're earning something comparable. So the legislators are worried about losing the taxation on $34,000 as opposed to being able to tax a second career income of $150,000 on joint income. It doesn't make sense.
It's
right?
a math issue, folks.
Right, and so it would mean a tremendous boost to the economy and the revenue from taxation.
Right, and that's just, as we talked about, one aspect of why this is absolutely such a great thing to really pay attention to. David, shout out again the website where if our listeners say, I'm in on this, I don't have time to deal with it, you can just go to the SDMAC website.
SDMAC.org. On the website, you can go click on the page Advocacy, and there you'll see both the bill in its current form, and I drafted a letter, and all you have to do is type your name, press send, and away it goes to Sacramento.
Very good. Jim, any final comments?
No final comments. Happy to be here, and happy we have somebody like David fighting for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for coming in. Very successful news conference yesterday. Wanted to certainly have our spotlight on the community folks, hear the exact same comments on that, and we're going to look forward to seeing how many people take you up on that. That is SB 1407. I'm Drew Schlosberg, Cloudcast Media. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.